Top 5 mistakes when buying a condo. Make sure you stay tuned to this episode of Prime Property. I promise it'll be really worth it this time. Good day, Toronto. Welcome to another episode of Prime Property TV. So glad you can join us here. Next week is March break, and although I don't have any kids, it doesn't hold any weight to me. It does mean that March break afterwards is the start of spring market. Maybe it has something to do with the weather or the fact that the parents don't have to deal with anything after the kids are out of school, but it's basically going to get crazier in the condo market and maybe pick up a little more steam in the regular detached market as well. March break is kind of like the equivalent of like the All-Star break in sports. Whatever comes afterwards does hold a lot of weight, whether it's the playoff or the market picks up. So in today's episode, I'm going to be going over the top 5 mistakes when buying a resale, which means an existing condo in Toronto. These are in order that I often see the most. If you bought a condo, let me know if you steer clear of these mistakes, okay? Number 1, not looking at your parking and locker. This one is hilarious, okay? Because nobody ever thinks about it. If you bought a resale condo that is over 10 years old, there's a very, very good chance that your parking spot is extra huge. I've seen some parking spots that can fit almost 2 cars in tandem because of the way the structural pillars are built. However, there are some bad situations where the spot is too small to fit a full-size sedan or too short to fit a SUV. So yes, these parking spots do exist. So make sure you look at the parking spot at the condo you are looking to buy and see what it comes with. If the seller doesn't know exactly where the parking spot is, make sure you check the status certificate, but more on that later in number 5. Funny enough though, when buying pre-construction condos right now, the builders are starting to separate the 2 types of sizes of parking spots in downtown right now. We get the full-size parking spots and the compact-size parking spots. The full-size will cost about $10,000 more in the downtown area. And remember, all of this applies to a locker as well because you will never have a document that says how large a locker is. So I highly recommend you go check it out so you know what you're getting yourself into. Number 2, not thinking about the resale value. I'll separate this into 2 categories, okay? First are the investors. I preach a lot about cash flow properties, and maybe it's me and it's my fault, but a lot of clients I work with almost forget about the resale value in the future. It's always good to have income producing assets such as cash flow condos, but you'll need to have options if or when you want to sell. A key example would be opting for a larger but older condo that could potentially cash flow right now. Some of these are probably on the Bay Street corridor you've seen before. They often don't do well in the resale market after a few more years because they're already quite old despite being larger than your average condo, okay? The second is end users, your home buyers, okay? What happens a lot to end users is they fall in love with a particular building or a unit and are emotionally attached to it. Unless you plan to live there for the rest of your life, you have to consider your resale value a little bit or even a lot more because especially if you are going to upsize, because it will affect how big of a house you can buy in the future. Because if your unit appreciates more, that means you can buy a bigger house in the future. So definitely keep that in mind. Number 3, losing sleep over the view. Oh man, this one is just a hot mess. Unless you have a super high penthouse over the water or a building or a park, there's a very high chance that nothing is going to be built. I honestly would not lose sleep over this. If you ever look at the development application map in downtown Toronto, there's an application in every other lot. It's crazy. But I'll separate this into 2 categories as well, similar to number 2. If you're an investor, paying for a view generally won't help you with the cash flow because that view is not going to get you more rent generally for what you're paying for it. So a lower floor is okay. I actually highly recommend that. It will, however, help with the resale value when you do sell it in the future or if you have to. And even then, there's potentially a development that is scheduled to come up by the time you sell. So it may sound contradicting to number 2, but if I really had to choose one, I would choose cash flow over a view any day for resale value. Now, if you're an end user and the dream of owning a condo is for that view, then by all means pay for it because you can't put a price on that. Now, having lived in a condo for a large part of my life, a great view does get old. It really does. I actually look at how much light would come into a unit instead because I personally think that's a bigger factor than having a view. Number 4, caring about the number. This one is hilarious and it's no coincidence I put it number 4. As a fairly westernized Chinese person, I can say I honestly don't care about whether there's a 4 in the address or not. Fun fact, being afraid of 4 is actually called tetraphobia and it's a really huge thing. If you don't like the number 4 for cultural reasons, that's perfectly fine. I've worked with many clients who avoid it. How However, if you don't prescribe to the fear of the number 4 for cultural reasons, there's no reason for you to be afraid of the number 4 for the off chance that you may eventually sell it to a Chinese person. Not every buyer is Chinese. That just makes no sense, okay? Here's a fact. Did you know even though some buildings skip the number 4 on the elevator and don't show up on your unit number, the legal description, even though it's a 4th floor, will say it's the 4th floor. It's in the status certificate. You can't avoid the number 4. It's gonna show up. Number 5, not reviewing the status certificate. If you don't review the status certificate, which is like a document indicating the health of the project, and know for a fact that when you buy into a condo, you specifically buy a parking unit and a locker in the condo, you won't be able to get one if the property closes, okay? Keep this in mind, you won't be able to buy one. Yes, you can still file for damages with the seller, but if the seller doesn't have a spot or a locker to sell you, they can't sell it to you. The other reason why it's very important is the status certificate is that it outlines the health of a condo and the reserve funds for an emergency or if there's a scheduled increase in maintenance fees. So definitely have a lawyer review it. Well, that's it for my top 5 mistakes. I hope that gives you and sheds you some light on what to avoid when buying condos. If you're in the market for a resale condo, you can definitely give me a ring. My number will be right here. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, make sure you give me a thumbs up. If you enjoyed the content of this video, you can subscribe to PPTO, which is right here. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contacts are on the screen. Until next time, guys, happy real estating. You can